Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in just 30 seconds or so, just waiting for a couple more people to join. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us. And thanks so much for joining the National Zoning Atlas for our metro area snapshot series. And today we'll be focusing on Denver. And this webinar series spotlights various metros as they come online on our national map. We'd like to thank our project partners, including Arnold Ventures, Housing Colorado, and the Mercatus Center at George Mason University. So I'm Olivia Rancine. I'm a zoning analyst and I've helped work on the state of Colorado. I'm joined today by Devin Chadston, who's also a zoning analyst and covered a lot of the Denver MSA area, as well as Tara Safavian, who handles our maps, so our geospatial analyst. And then finally, Carrie McCarowitz, who's an associate professor and department chair at the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at University of Colorado, Denver. Her students really made this possible, and they helped complete a significant portion of the Denver MSA, including the whole of Jefferson County. Right, next slide. Okay, so this is just an overview of what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to go through why we created the NZA, how we built it, and how to use it, and then Tara is going to run through a demonstration on our public map, and Devin is going to run through a zoning analysis, and we'll end in Q&As. Feel free to pop questions through the chat when they come up, and we'll address them at the end. So what is the NZA? The NZA is a collaborative research project working to digitize, demystify, and democratize the US zoning codes. It's a first of its kind database and interactive map that displays regulations that govern what and where people can build across the country. And we're doing this to unlock a better understanding about zoning. We already know that zoning not only affects our built environment, but also our economy, our natural environment, our health, and of course, our housing. Okay, so what makes zoning so complicated? A kind of unifying belief amongst us is that zoning is crazy complicated. And this all started back in 1922 from the State Zoning Enabling Act of 1922, so pictured here, and it was the model legislation for states to adopt to authorize local governments to zone. So essentially allow local governments to zone, and as a result, about 30,000 individual jurisdictions, so cities, towns, counties now have zoning. So this means that zoning is really decentralized, making it hard to understand at scale. Another factor that complicates zoning is that features within codes, so districts, are called things that are inconsistent. So a low density single family district may be called one thing in one district and something in another. Code accessibility is also inconsistent. So sometimes it's hard to even locate or a code online or in person. This is really true in small and rural towns with limited staff. And if you do manage to wrangle a code and read it, you would probably agree that it's really long, convoluted, and filled with a lot of legalese. So to respond to these challenges, the NZA first wanted to create a one-stop shop for zoning codes, meaning we collect and collate thousands of unique codes and store information about them in just a single database. Second, our methodology produces a standardization of key code data points that enable essentially an apples to apples comparison across different cities, counties, and towns. And it allows us to present zoning districts cohesively on a single national map. And then finally, the NZA is able to cut through the noise and make codes accessible to non-experts. As we were saying, zoning is really complicated. And so what we have endeavored to do is create an easy to use online map to promote public access and public education on zoning. It's pretty simple, but it's really powerful, a visual component that really reveals zoning's more inequitable trends. So as a testament to these claims, there's a couple examples of how some of our partners have activated their zoning atlases to help influence policy, inform analysis, and drive research in the field. Our most famous advocacy use case comes out of the great state of Montana, where the think tank Frontier Institute essentially used their Montana zoning atlas to convince lawmakers that the state's spike in home values was in part due to overly restrictive zoning. And the group succeeded in their campaign, and they adopted a package of sweeping zoning reforms, including easing restrictions on ADUs and duplexes and triplexes. The picture here shows the Montana governor, Jan Forte, speaking about this zoning reform adoption. And another example, our partner Housing Works Rhode Island published an annual fact book about housing. And after releasing the Rhode Island Atlas this fall, they incorporated zoning data into their analysis and enhanced the quality of their regional investigations. And finally, Atlas data is being used in scholarly research, among which includes a collaboration with Cornell Tech to investigate methods to accelerate zoning data collection and standardization using natural language processing. All right, we're going to talk about how the map is built. So the data inputted into the atlas has to be accurate enough to make sure it's usable for policymakers and clear enough so that non-experts can understand it. This is a really careful balance. And so we do this through following a methodology called How to Make a Zoning Atlas. And this document contains instructions for the atlas's two work streams. So both analyzing the code, that's what our analysts like myself and Devin work with, and then working with the mapping, the GIS data. And so this guide also provides instructions for how to input information into our backend online entry tool and database, the NCA editor. And it really creates consistency because we have a lot of collaborators on this effort. The leadership team regularly evaluates and updates this methodology, so it's constantly evolving as we learn from the myriad of zoning codes we dig into. So here's a view from inside our kind of back-end editor. So in every jurisdiction with zoning, analysts work together to establish the list of zoning districts present between the zoning code and the map. Here we have zoning districts listed for Ithaca, New York. And at this stage, we also identify what type of district it is. So whether it's residential, mixed use, non-residential, or if it's an overlay. And then analysts analyze over 100 different data points within each district, beginning with the treatment type. So meaning whether the residential district allows 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, or 4 or more family housing units. And here's some of the fields analysts fill out in the editor. So minimum lot size, setbacks, height caps, and parking requirements, as well as other structural characteristics. Here's an overview of our analysis to date. We have completed about 2,360 districts. Are in progress, and we've completed about 4,250. We've had over 320 contributors. It takes a lot of folks to analyze this data and dig into it. In all, we've published about jurisdictions that cover about 80 million Americans, and that's about 25% of the nation's population. And highlighted here in pink is the Denver Metropolitan Statistical Area. So this includes the city and county of Denver, and then its outlying suburbs. And I'm gonna now hand this over to Tara, who's gonna walk us through how to best use this public map.
Hi everyone. Once again, I'm Tara. I'm the geospatial analyst who worked on the Denver MSA. I'm going to do a brief demo on our interactive atlas. If you'd like to follow along, you can either go to this QR code here on the screen, or you can type into a search bar zoningatlas.org/atlas. I'm going to share my screen real quick. Alrighty. So this is what pops up when you load in the zoning atlas. The first thing that I'd like to draw your attention to is the legend and layer options, and this other features portion here at the bottom. There are water, tribal lands, and protected lands that you can turn on and off. And the reason I am drawing your attention to this is because we actually erase these items from our zoning for standardization and comparability across jurisdictions. Now I'll be moving to this other tab where I have the jurisdiction of Denver preloaded in. And I was able to do that by using the Zoom to feature right here. And by using that, I also get this little note card here in the corner that gives a brief statistic as well as information about the jurisdiction. Going back to the legend and layer options, now that we're zoomed in, we can see the different zoning district types that are showing up on the map. In light purple, we have residential zoning. In dark purple, we have mixed use zoning. And in beige, we have non-residential zoning. Okay, going to our filters now, you can see where people want to build different types of residential use. And what I'm going to show is our 4+ family apartments. And you can see once you click on that filter, the map updates and you can see exactly where you can and cannot build 4+ family apartments. And if you would like to get a little bit more information, be a little bit more specific, you can move on to the advanced filters. And let's say I want to keep looking at 4+ family apartments, but I want to see where there is no minimum parking requirement. I can filter even further and then see very specifically, okay, right here, I can build a 4+ family apartment and there's no parking requirement there. And once again, the little note card on the right corner updates and it shows the percent of zoned area where this is allowed. I'm going to reset my filters right now. The map will return to how it was. And I'm going to scroll down to the cards of zoning districts. And here you can see all 245 zoning districts in Denver. And if I was, say, interested in the B1 limited office district, I could find information about each individual district here. And I can either zoom to the district on the map, or I can just show more details for text information right here. So now I'm going to pass it off to Devin, and he's going to tell a little bit more about all of this.
Thank you, Tara. So let me talk a little bit about the state of zoning here in Metro Denver. Next slide. We reviewed the zoning text for the 53 jurisdictions in the Denver MSA. This analysis was completed in the fall, winter, and spring of 23 and 2024. So this analysis is a snapshot of the zoning regulations at this point in time. We're working on getting funding for ongoing maintenance of the atlas with the goal to complete annual updates. As a preface, our current analysis does not incorporate provisions of the state, nor does it evaluate land use regulations outside of the zoning code. For example, many towns regulate inclusionary or affordable housing outside of the zoning code. We only look at what is regulated by what we define as the zoning text. Future updates could include any statewide regulations that override local zoning laws, and the atlas can also allow for customized logging of special cases. For example, we added a special field for Connecticut after they adopted statewide reforms around accessory dwelling units. The atlas is simple to update in the event of entry errors or major legislative changes. And next, to give you a slide of an idea of the complexity of the review, We read over 14,444 pages of regulations, which is about 273 pages of text per jurisdiction, ranging from about a dozen in exurban villages to over 2,500 in Denver proper. There's a total of 910 districts we mapped in the MSA, with an average of 17 districts per jurisdiction, ranging from 2 to 245. As you could imagine, this work takes a lot of human brain power. We read the codes, applied the methodology, and simplified zoning requirements in order to extract key data points to make cross-jurisdictional comparisons. The following slides contain examples of insights we can generate with the data we collected. We can make apples-to-apples comparisons at the regional, state, and national level. Next slide. The Denver MSA is predominantly comprised of zone land, approximately 2/3. The remaining portion is comprised of protected lands, tribal lands, water surfaces, or unzoned land. Geospatial data for the protected lands comes from the USGS's Protected Areas database. Of that 66% of land that has zoning, 95% allows some type of residential development. About 86% of zoned land allows for primarily residential uses. 9% are within mixed-use districts that allow residential and other non-residential primary or principal uses. The predominance of primarily residential lands may indicate the need for more mixed-use zones as a policy change to support development that encourages shorter commutes. A small percentage of land area is categorized as non-residential or areas where principal residential uses are prohibited. I do want to point out that per our methodology, districts where the only residential uses allowed are accessory dwelling units like caretakers units, artist studios, or watchmen's quarters, as often seen in industrial and tourism districts, are categorized as non-residential districts. Next slide. So this graphic shows the breakdown of one family, two family, there we go. Of the 5% of land in the Denver MSA zoned as not residential, 30% is mixed with specific intended uses like hybrid industrial, commercial, retail, and office, or other mixed uses. 28% is primarily industrial use, and 29% is exclusively commercial use, such as malls or large shopping centers. 1% is zoned for civic or institutional uses, like government buildings or schools, and 12% is zoned for open space preservation and resource conservation. Next slide. This graphic shows the breakdown of one family, two family, three family, and four or greater family residential uses allowed by area across the 95% of zoned land, categorized as primarily residential or mixed use. I want to clarify that this is a measure of the number of units allowed per lot in each district. Our methodology aims to simplify and standardize data across jurisdictions. So when we say one family, it indicates a maximum of one family per lot. With the exception of ADUs, which are categorized separately. Two family means a max of 2 units are allowed per lot, so on and so forth. As you can see, all lands within the Denver MSA that we categorize as primarily residential or mixed use allow one family residential by right or with some kind of public hearing. About 32% of the land allows 2 or more family residential uses. However, almost all will require a public hearing. Jurisdictions could encourage housing development by allowing more than 1 unit of housing per lot by right. The following graph shows the acreage within jurisdictions where 4+ family housing is allowed. The upper limit on the lower axis is 15,000 acres. As you can see, the city and county of Denver is right around that upper limit, with Lakewood following with about a third of that figure. It makes sense. Denver as a city and county is particularly large in population and area. Other populous suburbs like Arvada, Brighton, and Littleton are also towards the top here. However, it's clear from this graphic that 4+ family housing is heavily regulated and permitted only in small portions of Denver area municipalities. We categorize accessory dwelling units separately and found that most land zoned to allow one family housing, or about 96%, allows ADUs, including 91% by right. This data point is important because ADUs are a gentle way to add density and could be identified as a low-hanging fruit for policy reform in areas with a predominance of single-family zoning. We also collect data on minimum lot sizes required to develop one family per lot, two family per lot, etc. And we convert all minimum lot size requirements to acreage totals. As you can see, almost all land in the MSA that allows one family dwellings per lot has some minimum lot size requirement, and the majority of that land requires minimum lot sizes greater than 2 acres. Like ADUs, decreased lot size requirements for one family dwellings may be a way for policymakers to add gentle density to one family zones. In addition to basic information on use and dimensional data typically associated with zoning districts like minimum lot size and setbacks, we also collect data on required affordability, residency restrictions, planned residential developments, and parking minimums. The special provisions are regulatory levers jurisdictions can use to encourage or disincentivize certain types of development. We collect this data so map users can evaluate if there are policy changes that they want to implement as a means to encourage development, like reduction or elimination of parking minimums, or to require affordability through the implementation of inclusionary housing requirements. Note that measures indicating 0% are actually land area values less than 0.5%. You can see here that some but not much land allows for housing to satisfy affordability criteria. Some permit mobile home plan developments, and 75% of land has a minimum parking requirement. We prepared a snapshot summary of our findings, which is a well-designed one-page summary of our presentation at the QR code here or at zoningatlas.org/snapshots, where you can also look at other snapshots we've completed in recent months. We will also appreciate and love your participation. Use the atlas. Again, find the map at zoningatlas.org/atlas. Once you start exploring, share what you find. Also ping us with your zoning code updates, corrections, or any questions about the atlas or our methodology. And please do connect with us. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at zoningatlas, find us on LinkedIn, or you can email us at info@zoningatlas.org.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I just want to say a quick thank you for letting our team, both CU Denver and our partners at Radian, to be involved in this important project. We all learned a lot. It was a great experience. And especially thank the Mercatus Center's Urbanity Project for funding our participation, the national team for all of your guidance, Sarah Bronin for starting this project and keeping it going, and the continuous improvement and learning they're doing, and all of you for joining in today as future users. So I hope this is utilized by all kinds of people for years to come.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. We're gonna go into our Q&A, and we've already got some questions popping up in the Q&A section. Please feel free to add any more you have. Okay, we've got a question. Does that mean that Denver's zoning overlays, which sit on top of the area zoning and modifying it, aren't included, or are they? Overlays are included in our total calculations. Obviously, overlays could add or remove residential, and we take that into account when providing this information. So yes, they are included. There are two questions about the recent state law reducing minimum parking requirements. So the state law, as I understand it, doesn't go into effect until 2025. And so we have not included that yet. And we will be updating the atlas to reflect those statewide changes in 2025 when they take place. What's great is that we're showing kind of a snapshot in time, so we can compare how those parking minimums change after the state legislation takes effect. Okay. We also have a question. Did you review the acreages zoned in Denver's 2010 form-based code and also the acreage still under the old Chapter 59 code? The answer is yes. Devin did that. Devin, is there anything else to add there?
It was a great learning experience to work with a city that technically has 2 active zoning codes. And so there are districts that are still within the Chapter 59 code that there's no land that's still zoned that way, but it's still in there. So we still have data that shows like what it had said because that code is still in effect.
Yes, which we had like how many pages? It was like 1,500 pages of zoning codes, like 200 and something districts.
I believe the The form-based code is 1,500 pages, and the former Chapter 59 is 1,000.
So a lot of text that you got to wade through. Is there a way to download tabular info about the zoning districts? I might. Tara, do you have, Tara or Diana on this question? Do we have, I'm unclear about okay, Diana's gonna send a response about downloading our data. We are going to publish this video on YouTube following the end of this presentation. So it will be available at our YouTube page, the National Zoning Atlas. All right. Tara and Devin and Carrie too, if you have any thoughts on this, were there any weird or interesting things that you've encountered while doing the Denver MSA zoning and GIS analysis?
Really, the primary weird thing for me was the two codes at once in Denver. That's not something I saw in other parts of Colorado. And for clarification, I worked on Denver and I worked on 3 outlying counties: Park, Clear Creek, and Elbert. And then Olivia and the CU Denver team did the bulk of the zoning analysis of sort of the inner suburbs, as well as like Douglas County, Jefferson County. So did you notice anything in particular in those areas?
I would say we had one county that was almost similar to Denver, Broomfield, where it had 4 zoning codes from different counties because it incorporated in 2001. So there was like over 1,000 pages of text in pre-2001 zoning that applied to a significant portion of the county. So that was interesting. I think we have another question here. Might NZA do this for other areas, including New Mexico? I do think we have some staff working on New Mexico right now. It really depends on our funding. So we receive funding from Housing Colorado, Arnold Ventures, and the Mercatus Center to specifically work on Colorado with a focus on the Denver MSA. So it kind of depends on when funding trickles through to when we get to certain jurisdictions, but you can track our progress on the National Zoning Atlas website that we've shared, and that'll show any states or any updates that we've made to other areas. Okay. All right. Well, I think that we're going to wrap this up. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out and please check out the Zoning Atlas site. And thank you for joining us today. We have one more question. Are the gray areas still being worked on? So the gray areas for our map are non-zoned areas, meaning that they don't have zoning. And we have about 50 jurisdictions in the state of Colorado and a couple jurisdictions in the Denver MSA that don't have zoning. So we gray them out. The darker gray. And I'm just looking at my map. So the gray denotes not having zoning, or it denotes water features. But that's all I got. Am I missing anything on the map, Tara?
No, that's it. Yeah, it's either non-zoned or it's water.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. We appreciate taking your time, and please reach out with any questions that you have.